Your Fitness Business Podcast Snapshot: how company culture influences the customer experience, the importance of the customer experience, and learning from customer feedback. All of that and more coming up in today's episode. Thank you for listening to the fitness industry's leading fitness business podcast for club owners and managers. The Fitness Business Podcast provides an educational platform for our listeners worldwide. The variety of guests are here to share their expert advice, tips, and knowledge with you, our FBP family. This month's interviews are brought to you by One Fit Stop.
One Fit Stop is modern fitness studio software built for the growing multi-location studio, providing scheduling, client management, programming, payment collection tools, and more that will set your business up to grow. To find out more, go to onefitstop.com or click on the link in today's show notes.
Welcome back for episode 344 with Annette Franz, owner of CX Journey, a customer service strategy consulting firm. Not only does the FBP podcast have the pleasure of speaking with Annette today, but Annette will also be speaking on behalf of the Australian Fitness and Recreation Industry Technology Summit. For our Australian FBP family, this event is in Sydney on the 21st and 22nd of July, and you can register now at fitnessindustrytechsummit.com.au. As part of your registration, there are 6 webinars from experts. Our guest today is one of them. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Fitness Business Podcast. I'm your host, Dory Nugent. And today, Annette Franz, the founder and CEO of CX Journey Incorporated, is with us. And she is going to talk about putting customer into the customer experience. Welcome, Annette.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yes. You are Orange County, California, right?
Orange County, California, by way of a farm in Ohio. So many years ago, though.
Okay, you're from Ohio?
Ohio, yeah. That's where I grew up.
All right. I have a daughter that goes to college in Ohio at Miami University.
Miami. Well, I'm an Ohio State girl, so go Bucks.
All right. Before we get started, I want to read something because I found something that you wrote that I just feel like is going to set the tone for our interview today, so that our listeners out there in our FBP family are like, all right, I'm dialed in and I know what's going on in this episode.
Awesome.
I read, quoting Annette, putting the customer in the customer service experience means that you're thinking about the human in front of you, listening to them, understanding them, designing the experience for them. And it's a reminder that without the customer, you have no business. I saw this and it was just so beautifully written. I thought it just summed up exactly what we're going to talk about today about customer experience. So let's get started. And my first question to you, Annette, is, with clubs opening and closing all over the world in the last 12 months, staff and member culture has been challenged.
So customer experience is really the sum of all the interactions that a customer has with a brand over the life of the relationship with the brand. And probably more importantly, the feelings, the emotions, and the perceptions that the customer has about those interactions. And customer service is really one of those interactions, right? So that's what customer experience is. And that's the difference between customer experience and customer service. Culture is defined as the core values plus behaviors, right? Define your core values of your organization, and then align and define and align the behaviors that are associated with each of one of those core values. And culture is really the foundation of the organization, right? It's if you get the culture right, it makes everything else so much easier.
Could you just really truly summarize, with being the expert, how important it is to a business?
Yeah, you know what? It's without customers, we have no business, right? That's the bottom line, right? And customers will choose to go elsewhere if we don't deliver a great experience. And really what we end up having to do is we have to focus on understanding the customer, understanding what their pain points, what their problems are, what that they're trying to solve, what jobs they're trying to do, so that we can ultimately design and deliver an experience for them. And so it's so important because, businesses that focus on the customer experience and focus on the employee experience grow so much faster, 5 times faster than those who don't. And, there's a lot of research out there that shows the value of investing in the customer and the customer experience and what those returns are ultimately in terms of market share, a wallet share of wallet, the performance, on the market, in the stock market, all of that. So there are a ton of statistics out there, but there are a ton of brands who are also doing it well, who are really reaping the benefit of delivering a great customer experience.
All right. So let's hear, who do you think delivers a great customer experience?
Yeah, and it's different for everybody, right? There's sort of this whole bucket of companies that we typically refer to because they always rise to the top. So I would call out companies like Zappos, Amazon, Delta Airlines, Southwest Airlines. I don't think anybody would dispute any of those. Ritz-Carlton, REI, Patagonia, WD-40, companies like that. American Express is often at the top of that list too. Those are some of the companies that are doing it right. And so not only are they focusing on the customer experience, but they're also focusing on the employee experience, because we know that when employees have a great experience, customers will as well.
I'm glad you said that, because I was going to follow up by saying, well, what makes them a company of great customer experience?
Yeah. So first of all, let's use Zappos as the example, right? So going back to talking about culture, Zappos is built on these 10 core values and really around a service, delivering wow service. That's their sort of foundational key core value, right? And all the others just sort of cascade from there, but they all relate to having a great customer-focused and customer-centric culture, focusing on the employees, and then ultimately delivering a great experience for their customers. So I think that's really it. That's sort of the nuts and bolts of it, is the culture, making sure your employees have the tools, the resources, the policies. They're not prohibitive or inhibitive to delivering great experience. They don't have broken processes. They've got what they need to deliver a great experience for their customers. And, honestly, when I first start working with clients, that's what I will interview the executives, and I'll interview some employees, and I'll interview some customers. And that's what the employees tell me. If things are awry with, what they have in terms of doing their jobs and doing them well, they basically say, I don't have what I need to deliver the experience that my customers deserve. So it comes straight from the employees. They want to do a good job, and they want to do right by their customers.
Yeah. One thing about Zappos that I do know is the attention that they pay towards their employees. Yeah. And that's something that I find is a mistake when it comes to companies. They spend so much time and focus and preaching about, the customer experience, They forget about the staff. Yeah. And it's the old saying, happy staff, happy customer.
Yeah, absolutely. I started my career back in the early 90s at J.D. Power and Associates. And when I would go out and talk to clients who obviously, J.D. Power and Associates is all about market research and voice of the customer, I would always say, hey, we should be listening to your employees too. And they always pushed it off. They said, we'll listen to them later. We'll talk to them later, right? And it's so funny, just in the last probably 3 or 4 years, there's been this uprising of people realizing that, hey, we actually do need to listen to our employees and focus on our employees as well, because what a difference that makes. And, especially in certain industries where turnover is high, or, there's a war for talent, when you focus on the employees and the employee experience, you're going to attract the people that you want to attract. And I think it's important, since I brought up war for talent, to say that employee experience is not about, ping pong tables and beer Fridays, right? It's about so much more than that.
I'm glad you brought that up about the employees, because you're right. The talent is limited. And I get baffled sometimes because I see like this really great employee somewhere and they've made my customer experience a complete 10. But if you get to know that employee, then like they're not happy where they're at. And you get this whole other side and that they're complaining. And I know some people are never happy, but you're just kind of like, you're like, oh, well, that stings because I really kind of like this place. So.
Well, and one of the things that we learned too in the last year with the pandemic is that, there was a ton of research out there saying that customers now want to buy from companies that not only obviously take care of them and make sure they're, safe and all of that, but they want to buy from companies that take care of their employees, that make sure that employee health and safety is at the very top of the list. So I think we're being pushed along by the pandemic as well.
So Annette, getting back to the customer again, you need to bring the customer voice into all meetings, discussions, decisions, processes, and design. Can you explain that a little bit further? What do you mean bring the customer into the meeting?
Yeah. So what you're talking about there is a part of my definition of what a customer-centric culture is, right? A customer-centric culture is one that is deliberately designed to be that way. It starts from the top, right? The CEO and the executives commit to bringing just that, the voice of the customer and the customer's best interest into everything that they do. And I always say, there's no decisions, no discussions, no decisions, no designs without bringing in the customer voice, without asking, how will this impact her? How will this make her feel? What problems will this solve for her? Those kinds of things. And basically what I'm saying there is that, and I think we're going to talk about these in just a minute, but all the different ways that we take the time to understand our customers and listen to our customers, we've got to bring those into our meetings and into our discussions and into the designs and how we do things, and that starts also from going back to my definition of culture is core values and behavior, right? You've got to take a look at those core values and make sure you have some customer-centric core values in place as well. So then from there, you take all that information that and data and feedback and learnings and everything that you hear from your customers, and you bring it into the organization. And I'll share with you a couple of examples. So I mentioned Amazon earlier. Jeff Bezos is one who's known for having an empty chair in his executive staff meetings, right? And that chair is there to represent the customer. So there's always a place. And I've got clients who have taken that a step further, and they'll put a stuffed animal, or they'll put a picture of a customer, or they'll put something there so that it's very clearly about the customer, right? We do things like stream customer feedback throughout, monitors throughout the organization. We hang up posters or pictures of the customer personas around the organization so that the customer is always front and center. A great example of that is Airbnb, and that's another company that I should have mentioned earlier when you asked about examples of brands that take care of employees and customers. But what Airbnb does, if you walk through their headquarters, they've got pictures of their hosts and a little plaque next to those pictures, not all their hosts, but some of them, right? But stories of those hosts. Why are they hosting? Why do they want to share their homes with strangers, right? And throughout the office, all of their meeting rooms and gathering places are all designed after actual host sites. You could go and then they've got the story about, so they've brought the customer in to the organization, right? There is nothing there that does not remind you that they are in business for the customer, right? So those are just a few examples. There's a lot of other ways to bring the customer in, sharing customer feedback, sharing customer data. When you're having your staff meetings, talk about, put the metrics aside. Everybody knows how many, customers were, what are the sales numbers, how much revenue, all of that. Everybody knows that because you share it ad nauseum, day in and day out, right? You talk about it. But who talks about customers and customer stories? So bring those in and start all of your team meetings or your company meetings with stories about customers or stories about employees who've had these great interactions with customers, those kinds of things. That's how we bring the customer in and just remind everybody on a daily basis that that's why we're in business.
Annette, this is awesome because I've been in so many meetings And I don't know, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just not looking at it the right way, but I'm not sure that any of our meetings, we really did that. It was about metrics. It was going over numbers. It was going over marketing strategies. But the fact that you're like, hey, bring them in and your ideas of how to bring them in, I love that. I think that's really cool. So all the you business owners out there, GMs, department heads, bring that customer into your next meeting. Try something a little different and see if it changes the culture of your meeting.
I think it will. I really think it will. And oh, by the way, you can actually bring a customer in too. You don't have to bring in just the words and the stories. Bring an actual customer into the meeting too. So,
yeah, and I like how you include design. I've been in many meetings where we've talked about design and color, and I think it was more of just whoever was the decision maker, they picked out what they liked or what was trending or what was popular, not so much to say, hey, is this really something that is this a color that most of our customers would enjoy? How does that color make them feel? So pretty cool stuff. Annette, besides being the founder and CEO of CX Journey Incorporated, you've also written a book, which is pretty cool. And it's on customer experience, and it's entitled Customer Understanding, 3 Ways to Put the Customer in a Customer Experience and at the Heart of Your Business. What are the 3 ways to understand the customer?
So the 3 ways are this: listen, characterize, and empathize. And I'll spend a couple minutes on each just to help you understand what each one of those is. So the first one is listen. Listen is where most companies start, right? Listen is all about surveys, feedback, any way that you hear from your customers, right? So it's, like I said, surveys, online reviews, customer advisory boards, social media, however you get feedback from your customers. It's also what I call the breadcrumbs of data that customers leave behind as they interact and transact with you. And that is, so if you think about a gym situation or you think about a retail situation, right? It's when people come in and they buy from you. At the gym, it's, when members check in, right? Check in, buy something at the pro shop, get a drink at the juice bar, whatever it is, right? It's all of that, but you keep all of that data in one place, right? And when you capture that, especially if you take a look at, okay, well, this member hasn't been here in the last 6 months and we just sent out a survey and we got feedback, and now we're going to tie that together and we're really going to understand either why that member hasn't been here in 6 months or if they're ever going to come back again, right? So that's the kind of thing that we're looking at. So listening is all about the feedback and the data that you already have about your customers and bringing that together to really give you a good understanding of what their expectations are, what their experience has been, where they might be heading, right? And I think probably the most important thing, and as I talk about each of these 3, the most important thing is to do something with it, right? You've got a ton of data, whether it's from feedback or it's just from, tracking customers, tracking members, whatever it is, right? You have a ton of data. You have to do something with it. And if you don't, then it's just, A, it's a waste of time. And B, you're really losing out on some valuable insights that could really save your business, quite honestly. So that's the first way. The second way is what I call characterize. And this is really all about really understanding who your customers are. Ultimately, it's about building personas. And personas are really research-based. Like you have to actually go and talk to customers. It's not about people sitting in a room and going, who do we think our customers are? Who do we think our members are, right? It's about actually talking to people and understanding what their pain points are, what problems are they trying to solve. How can we help them solve those problems, right? What jobs are they trying to do? Those kinds of things. So in a gym situation, it's going to be, somebody who's maybe elderly who wants to just stay in shape and, whatever it is, or it might be a bodybuilder, or it might be a fitness enthusiast, or it might be somebody who's just working out to stay, whatever it is, but you don't know who your customers are until you take the time to do that research and really understand, again, their pain points and the problems they're trying to solve and why they're using your product or your service, right? And ultimately that takes you a step closer to personalizing the experience for each individual, right? And then the third way is what I call empathize. And empathize is all about walking in our customers' shoes. And what this refers to is journey mapping. And I have a journey mapping process that, not a lot of people look at journey mapping as a process. They look at it as a tool. So journey mapping is really a way for us to, again, walk in our customer's shoes from some point A to point B. So think about, you're calling customer service, right? So I had a problem. I decided to look on the website, couldn't solve it there, talked with a chat bot, didn't fix it there, got on the phone, called. And then what was the journey? What was the experience till you got to point B, which is your problem solved, right? So it's step by step by step. When we journey map, what we capture is what the customer is doing, step by step by step until that problem is solved or whatever it is that they're trying to do, buy something or whatever it is they're trying to do. So what they're doing, what they're thinking, like what their goals are along the way, and what they're feeling, how each step made them feel, right? Was it frustrating? Was it helpful? Was it exciting? And it's so funny because when I'm doing journey mapping workshops with folks, they look at me and laugh when I say we're going to put our feelings up on the, and I make them do it in pink Post-it notes too. So, and they laugh, but you know what? Ultimately, that's where we learn a lot. How do we make our customers feel? This experience is a lot about, like I said, the emotions and the perceptions and the feelings about the interactions that they have. And so, I had one client that in the construction industry who learned that there were times along the experience that their customers didn't feel like they cared about them. And that's not something you think about when you're in construction care. But yeah, that's what happened. You learn about your customers' feelings and you learn about where the experience really falls apart and where things are going well as well. So that's sort of the crux of journey mapping is really mapping out step by step. What's the experience and how did we, what were the customer's goals and how do we make them feel along the way? And then what we do is we identify where things are breaking down, where we've got to fix things and what things we continue doing because those are the things that we're doing well or we're delighting our customers. So
I saw on your website that you have an example of journey mapping. It's in one of your photos on your website. And I really recommend everybody to go check that out just to have a visual because it is hard on a podcast to see exactly what you're talking about. But I did see sticky notes and it did look like it was a journey across like a long whiteboard.
Yeah, exactly. It's butcher paper and Post-it notes. And typically, like I said, what we capture is what the customer is doing, thinking, and feeling. But we also might capture, what systems, whether it's a phone or a website or a mobile app or whatever it is they were using, any documents that they used along the way, what channel, was it phone, web, chat, whatever it was. And then we'll also capture a timeline. How long did each step take so that we can really understand where expectations were broken. Oh, well, this took 5 days. Why did that take 5 days? Normally we can do that in 2 minutes, kind of thing. So we can capture as much or as little data as we want along the way, but the big things is what the customer is doing, thinking, and feeling. And then ultimately, the next step is when we've identified where things are breaking down for the customer is to then take a look inward. And that's a tough one. And a lot of people don't, and a lot of companies don't do this. And it's something called service blueprinting. And what we do is we take a look at the people, the tools, the systems, and the processes behind the scenes that are creating the experience for the customer, right? And from there, identify the root cause. What's causing things to break down, or what's facilitating the experience that they're having that we either need to fix or, keep doing or make more efficient or whatever it is, right? So important step in that process.
Is there one step that you feel is more important than the other, or are all three pretty darn equal?
Well, there are actually 6 steps in the process. I won't take you through all 6. The key ones is to map the current state experience, map the service blueprint, and then design the future state, which is also another map, is to now work with customers to design what the ideal experience would be going forward. So all are important, and they all work together, right? You can't just do one. You can't just map what the current experience is, because that's only one part of it, because you have to look inward. You have to do that service blueprint to figure out what's causing the breakdowns for the customers, what's creating the problem for the customer. And then once you've fixed that, now you've got to go and design redesign, reimagine the experience to be one that's ideal for customers. And ultimately, the bottom line of doing all this is how we're going to keep our customers, right? And I think that's everybody's bottom line is how do we retain customers, or how do we grow our customer base? And if we can retain customers and we can have them out there advocating and saying, you know what, this is the best experience, or I've had the best experience here, and go and tell their friends, that's what we're doing here.
Get your pen ready now for Keep Me's Fit Bizpiration.
What are your 3 tips to help refocus or relaunch a customer-centric culture?
I think, I'll sort of recap a couple of the things that I just talked about, right? Number 1, revisit your core values. And if you don't have core values, you need to identify them, right? You need to identify them and then align behaviors, expected and not desirable behaviors with those. What are the behaviors that you are acceptable and what's not acceptable with each one of those core values? And core values don't just sit on the wall, right? You have to operationalize them. You have to act on them. You have to. And that's why it's so important to outline those behaviors. And we use those core values to hire, to fire, to promote, to design our processes, our policies, to make decisions. So it's really important to have those in place in order to have a customer-centric business. Number 2 would be to really take a look at your employee experience. I think that, as we talked about, that is one thing that a lot of businesses just set aside and don't even really focus on. And I know in a gym business, there's a lot of transient, it might be seasonal employees, some of that happening as well. But that doesn't mean that we still shouldn't focus on the employee experience. When I was a kid, I worked in retail, and I love the company that I work for. And I just kept going back there every time I came home from school, during the summer, during Christmas break, whatever it was, and I went back and worked there because I had a great time and the experience was great. So those are the kinds of things that we need to focus on, because, once you train an employee, if you can bring that back into the business, even on a seasonal basis, that saves you a lot of time and money in terms of training dollars too. And then I think the third thing is really, focusing on those 3 ways to, understand your customers. And I think probably the most important way to start is just listening, right? And key thing to do there is, when you're listening, is to really use that feedback to make some changes. I think the biggest place that people stumble is they listen, but they do nothing with what they hear, or they get offended. And I've worked with several clients in the gym industry over the years, and gym owners get offended by some of the things that they hear in that feedback. Don't get offended. It's there to make you better.
Keep Me, smarter member retention. KeepMe.ai.
And now it's time to get back to our show. This has been a great episode filled with so many good little nooks and crannies of ideas. I just love the journey mapping. I love that idea.
I think it's really going to create just this real understanding. It's a visualization, right? It really helps people understand. And I've had so many of these workshops where CEOs have sat in on these workshops and we're just like, wow, I didn't realize we did this to our customers. So yeah, very eye-opening.
Yeah, I highly recommend our listeners out there to give it a try. So whether they look to you for a workshop, or they can purchase your book, which, go ahead, promote your book.
Yes. Thank you. The book is Customer Understanding, 3 Ways to Put the Customer and Customer Experience and at the Heart of Your Business. And it's available on Amazon.
Thank you, Annette, for joining us today. And you can hear Annette when you register for the Fitness and Recreation Industry Technology Summit webinar series. For Australian FBP family, this event is in Sydney, July 21st and 22nd. Registration is now open at fitnessindustrytechsummit.com.au. And for our non-Aussies, you can sign up just for Annette's webinar on the 26th of March by going to fitnessindustrytechsummit.com.au. Now it's time for a few words from our podcast partner, MyZone. MyZone has pioneered unique wearables with talking point technology that makes the difference. Reach more members of your community and keep them engaged for longer through motivation and gamification wherever they choose to work out. In the gym, at home, or outdoors, we're stronger together. Get in the zone at myzone.org.
Quickfire 5.
Can you guess what is coming up next? That's right, Quick Fire 5 with author and personal trainer Kevin Mullins. Hey, this week's Quick Fire 5 guest is fitness professional Kevin Mullins. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Hi, Dory. How are you doing? Thanks for having me on. This is going to be fun.
Well, I love your energy. Perfect for Quick Fire 5. So let's get started. Our first question is, what was a business or life lesson that you learned from one of the jobs that you did when you were younger?
I have to relate to my construction hydro seeding job. I was working out in the summer, 95-degree days in the sun. And the lesson I learned was you can either work with your mind and influence and change on a higher level, or you can work with your hands. And there's nothing wrong with blue collar work, but I really didn't want to sweat on roofs and I didn't really want to dig ditches in the summer sun. So it motivated me to actually go to college when I had been thinking about more of a labor trade.
Okay. So this is kind of good segue into our next question. If you weren't doing what you're doing now, what would you be doing?
Taking over the world. Now, law enforcement or military. I grew up in a military family. When I first was trying to be a trainer and I was the sort of starving artist phase, wasn't making much money. I was young and a little immature. I was like, all right, maybe I should, apply to the police. And I did. I applied to Capitol Police as well as DC, like Washington, DC City Police, I guess was how you'd call it.
Okay. What military branch would you have gone into?
Much to my parents' chagrin, because my dad's Air Force, I would have chosen the Marines because I would have wanted to go in with a college degree, become an officer, and then join the fight. Because at the time we were in the midst of Afghanistan and Iraq. So,
all right. My favorite books, post 9/11. I think I've probably read just about every one. If not, if I find one, I'm on it. So,
yeah.
All righty. When you write an autobiography, what will be the title?
My title right now of a book that I'm sort of piecing together is Life in Second Place. I've had so many amazing opportunities and I've come up just short. And at first in the younger years, I was bitter about it and I just couldn't understand why I wasn't winning per se, but you still get a lot of really cool opportunities coming in second. And so it's a lesson to those who push really hard and they're not in last, but they're also not in first. So that would be the biography.
Okay, good one. Number 4, what is a book you would recommend to everyone out there listening?
This is the book I recommend more than any other. Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. He was former CEO of the Starwood Group, amongst other things. And it's all about how building your network, how networking is not a bad word, and that who you know, and more importantly, how they know you is going to unlock doors for you. And I was just a worker bee. And then I read that book and I realized that I needed to build relationships and be more than just my hourly work ethic.
All right. Nothing wrong with a good work ethic. And finally, all right, here we go, Kevin. Give us your best sales pitch. Why should our listeners come back next week to hear your wisdom?
This is simple. I've been in the field for over a decade with over 20,000 hours of training experience. And I am now in an executive role, but I still think like a trainer. If anything, I frustrate the people I work with because I don't like spreadsheets, but I know how to operate them. And so I want to help our industry. I want to help the executives who listen understand the trainer and the floor level. But I also want to help trainers understand, hey, listen, this is a business. Millions of dollars are made and lost every single day, especially now coming out of this pandemic. So I want to give the wisdom and the answers that help set everyone who has chosen this industry as their lifeblood to move on and make better decisions in 2021 and beyond.
Okay, you heard it here first. Kevin Mullins next week. And here's what Kevin's going to talk about. Kevin's written a book called Enter Day by Day, the Personal Trainer's Blueprint to Achieving Ultimate Success. And we're going to break that book down with Kevin next week, so tune in. Here is a message from our podcast partner, Precor.
Tribe, if you haven't explored a functional training space for your gym, then now is the time. With Queenex Functional Training by Precor, there is a unit to fit every space. Plus, education is included to ensure that training is delivered with confidence. You need to jump online and check this out right now. Go to precor.com/fitness business podcast.
Did you know that our show notes are filled with live links and information on how to reach out to our guests? Well, head on over to our show notes at fitnessbusinesspodcast.com. Next up, a message from our founding partner, Active Management.
Hi, FBP family. It's JT from Active Management, the founding partner of the Fitness Business Podcast. Thanks to the amazing technology at our fingertips, we can now work with clients all over the world. But right now, you can join the free online Active Management Facebook community. It's an amazing group of people just like you. Sure, I share weekly resources, but it's the power of the community that you will experience that will make this your go-to Facebook group. Remember, it's free, fun, and inspirational. Go to facebook.com/groups/Active Management Community.
What you leave behind is not what's engraved in stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others.